Victor Chen adjusted the borrowed wheelchair outside the Riverside Cafe for the 5th time that morning. His hands trembled slightly as he checked his reflection in the glass door. A tech CEO worth millions, and here he was, disguising himself as someone struggling just to survive. His therapist would probably have a field day with this decision. The past year had been exhausting in ways that had nothing to do with running his company. Woman after woman had appeared in his life, each one more interested in his bank account than his personality. They memorized his net worth before learning his favorite color. They knew his company's stock price, but never asked about his dreams. Victor was tired of being seen as a walking investment opportunity rather than a human being. This blind date was supposed to be different. His childhood friend had set it up, promising that this woman knew nothing about his wealth or status. Victor had taken it a step further with his disguise. He wanted to see if anyone could love him for who he truly was, not what he possessed. The cafe bustled with the lunch crowd. Victor wheeled himself to a corner table near the large window, exactly where his friend had instructed. His heart pounded against his ribs. This plan was either brilliant or completely insane. Probably both. The wrong table. The cafe door burst open with such force that the bell above it rang out like an alarm. Nora Bennett rushed inside, her dark curls escaping from a messy bun, her apron slightly askew. She was 20 minutes late for her break, and her manager had not been happy about it. Working double shifts at the cafe while juggling night classes and caring for her 14-year-old brother left Nora in a constant state of controlled chaos. Today had been particularly brutal. A customer had spilled an entire pot of coffee. Another had complained about literally everything on the menu, and the dishwasher had broken down mid-rush. Nora scanned the cafe quickly, looking for an empty table where she could collapse for 15 precious minutes. Her eyes landed on a man sitting alone near the window. The corner spot. Perfect. She had asked her coworker to save that table for her break. Without hesitation, Nora practically threw herself into the chair across from him, dropping her bag on the floor with a heavy thud. She let out a long, exhausted sigh before looking up. "Thank goodness," she said, running her hands over her face. "I thought this day would never give me a break, literally." Victor blinked in confusion. This was not what he expected. "I am so sorry I am late," Nora continued, completely misreading the situation. The morning shift was absolutely brutal. We had this customer who ordered a cappuccino with exactly 3 inches of foam. 3 inches! Who measures foam? And then when I brought it, he pulled out an actual ruler. A ruler, can you believe that? Victor opened his mouth to clarify, but Nora was already rolling forward with her story. And that was just the beginning. Then the dishwasher exploded. Well, not literally exploded, but it might as well have. Water everywhere. We were running around like we were trying to save the Titanic. My shoes are still completely soaked. She laughed at herself, a genuine sound that lit up her entire face. Victor found himself captivated by her animated expressions, the way her hands moved as she talked, the spark in her brown eyes. Anyway, Nora finally took a breath. Thanks for agreeing to meet with me about the weekend catering position. My friend mentioned you needed extra help for events, and honestly, I could really use the additional income right now. Realization dawned on Victor. She thought he was someone else. She had sat at the wrong table. An unexpected connection. Victor knew he should correct her mistake immediately. But something stopped him. Maybe it was the genuine warmth in her smile. Maybe it was the way she talked to him like he was just another person, not someone to impress or manipulate. Maybe he was just curious to see where this would go. "Tell me about yourself," Victor said instead. "Oh, well, I have been working in food service for about 3 years now," Nora began. "I started as a dishwasher, actually. Worked my way up to server, and now I take any catering gigs I can find on weekends. I am pretty good at it, despite what happened this morning." She laughed again, and Victor felt something warm settle in his chest. "I mean, I am reliable, hardworking, and I learn fast. Plus, I am great with difficult customers. You have to be when someone measures their foam with a ruler." "What made you get into this line of work?" Victor asked, genuinely interested. Nora's expression softened. "Life, mostly. My parents passed away 2 years ago in a car accident. Left me to take care of my younger brother, Tommy. He is 14 now. Smart kid, but he needs stability, you know? A roof over his head, food on the table, someone making sure he does his homework. The vulnerability in her voice made Victor's heart ache. That must be incredibly difficult, he said quietly. Some days are harder than others, Nora admitted. But Tommy is worth it. He wants to be an engineer someday. I am going to make sure he gets that chance, even if it means I work 3 jobs and survive on instant noodles. Victor felt humbled by her strength. Here was someone facing real struggles, real challenges, and she faced them with humor and determination. No complaints, no self-pity, just pure resilience. They talked for over an hour. Nora shared stories about ridiculous customers and kitchen disasters. Victor found himself laughing more genuinely than he had in months. She asked him questions too, and he answered carefully, sticking to vague truths about working in business. "You seem like a really good person," Nora said eventually, her eyes studying his face. "Most people in your position would be bitter or angry, but you are not." "That says a lot." Victor felt guilt twist in his stomach. She thought they were in similar positions, both struggling to get by. The lie suddenly felt heavier. The interruption. The cafe door opened again, and a woman in an expensive designer suit walked in. Her eyes scanned the room with practiced efficiency until they landed on Victor. "There you are," she said, her heels clicking sharply against the floor as she approached. "I have been looking everywhere for you. The hostess said you would be at the back table." Nora's face shifted from confusion to horrified understanding in seconds. "Oh, no," she whispered. "Oh, no, no, no." The woman looked between them, her expression turning cold. "Who is this?" Victor opened his mouth, but Nora was already standing, her face flushed with embarrassment. "I am so sorry," Nora stammered. "I thought I made a huge mistake. I sat at the wrong table. Clearly," the woman said icily. "Please, I did not mean to interrupt anything. I was just confused about which table." Nora grabbed her bag, avoiding eye contact with Victor. "I should go." But Victor surprised himself with what he did next. Without thinking, he reached out and gently caught Nora's wrist. "Wait," he said. Everyone in the nearby tables turned to look. The woman in the designer suit crossed her arms expectantly. "Actually," Victor said, looking directly at Nora, "I would really like to finish our conversation, if you want to." Nora stared at him, stunned. "But your date was a mistake," Victor finished. He turned to the other woman. "I am sorry. This is not going to work out." The woman's mouth dropped open in shock. "Excuse me?" "You seem like a lovely person," Victor said diplomatically, "but I think we are looking for different things." The woman stared at him for a long moment, then grabbed her designer purse with a sharp motion. "This is absolutely ridiculous. Good luck with your charity case." She stormed out, leaving shocked silence in her wake. Nora stood frozen, processing what had just happened. "You just sent away your date, for me, a complete stranger who sat at the wrong table. Best decision I have made in a long time," Victor said with a genuine smile. Nora slowly sat back down, a mixture of disbelief and something else playing across her features. "You are either the nicest person I have ever met or completely insane." "Maybe a little of both," Victor admitted. They looked at each other, and suddenly they were both laughing. Real, honest laughter that seemed to wash away the awkwardness of the moment. "So," Nora said when they finally caught their breath, "does this mean I got the catering job?" Victor grinned. "I think we can work something out." 3 days after their chaotic first meeting, Victor found himself waiting at a small park bench near the cafe where Nora worked. They had exchanged phone numbers, and somehow, without either of them planning it, they had fallen into a pattern of meeting whenever Nora had breaks between her shifts. Victor arrived early, positioning his wheelchair near a fountain where children played and pigeons gathered hopefully for crumbs. He watched them with a smile, feeling lighter than he had in years. There was something about Nora that made him forget about quarterly reports and board meetings. She made him feel human again. Sorry," Nora's voice called out as she jogged toward him, slightly out of breath. Her hair was pulled back in a ponytail, and she wore simple jeans and a faded sweater. The lunch rush went longer than expected. Someone ordered a salad with 14 specific modifications. 14. At that point, just make it at home. Victor laughed. How do you even keep track of 14 modifications? Carefully and with a lot of prayers, Nora said, settling onto the bench beside him. She pulled out a small paper bag. I brought you something. Leftover croissants from the morning batch. They were going to throw them away, but they are still perfectly good. The simple gesture touched Victor more than she could know. When was the last time someone had thought of him without expecting something in return? Thank you, he said, genuinely moved. They split the croissants, feeding pieces to the bold pigeons that crowded around their feet. The afternoon sun was warm, and for a moment, everything felt peaceful. Cracks in the foundation. Over the next 2 weeks, Victor and Nora spent every possible moment together. They met at parks, walked through street markets, and sat in cheap diners sharing meals. Victor was careful to maintain his disguise, always arriving in the wheelchair, always dressed simply, but maintaining the lie grew harder each day. During one of their walks through a flea market, Nora paused at a stall selling old books. Her fingers traced the spine of a worn philosophy textbook. I used to love reading these, she said softly. Before everything happened with my parents, I was studying philosophy at the community college, had dreams of maybe becoming a teacher someday. What stopped you? Victor asked, though he already suspected the answer. Life stopped me. Nora smiled sadly. Tommy needed me more than I needed a degree. Besides, tuition kept going up, and I could not justify spending money on books when we barely had enough for groceries. She put the book down and moved on, but Victor saw the longing in her eyes. He made a mental note of the title. That evening, after Nora left for her night shift, Victor sat in his actual apartment, a penthouse overlooking the city, and stared at his phone. He wanted to help her. He could solve all her problems with a single phone call. But how could he do that without revealing who he really was? The guilt gnawed at him constantly now. Tommy's world. 2 weeks into their friendship, Nora invited Victor to meet Tommy. They gathered at a small playground near Nora's apartment building. Tommy arrived on his skateboard, a lanky teenager with Nora's same warm eyes and quick smile. So, you are the guy my sister keeps talking about, Tommy said, studying Victor with the brutal honesty only teenagers possessed. Tommy! Nora's face flushed red. What? You do talk about him, all the time. Victor said this? Victor thinks that. Tommy grinned mischievously. Victor found himself liking the kid immediately. Tommy was smart and funny, with the kind of sharp intelligence that reminded Victor of himself at that age. They spent the afternoon together. Tommy showed off his skateboard tricks, some successful, some ending in dramatic falls that made them all laugh. Victor found himself genuinely enjoying the simple pleasure of their company. You are pretty cool for an adult, Tommy declared eventually. Most grown-ups are boring. High praise, Victor said with a smile. As the sun began to set, Tommy grew more serious. Hey, Victor. Thanks for making my sister smile again. She has been really stressed lately, and I worry about her sometimes. She acts tough, but I know things are hard. The words hit Victor square in the chest. Here was a 14-year-old kid, mature beyond his years, caring for his sister as much as she cared for him. Your sister is one of the strongest people I have ever met, Victor said honestly. Yeah, Tommy agreed. She is pretty awesome. The eviction notice. What Victor did not know was that Nora's situation had become desperate. The eviction notice remained tucked in her drawer, a constant reminder of the ticking clock. She had 15 days when she first received it. Now she had 7. Every morning, Nora woke up at 5, worked the breakfast shift at the cafe, attended her afternoon classes that she could barely afford, then returned for the dinner shift. On weekends, she took any catering job available. She was running on 4 hours of sleep and pure determination, but it was not enough. It would never be enough. One evening, after saying goodbye to Victor, Nora stopped by the landlord's office. Mr. Patterson was a heavy-set man with cold eyes and no patience for sob stories. "Miss Bennett," he said without looking up from his computer, "still 3 months behind." "I know, Mr. Patterson. I am working on it. I have been picking up extra shifts." "That is not my problem. You have 7 days or you and your brother are out. I already have people interested in the unit." "Please," Nora's voice cracked slightly. "We have nowhere else to go. Just give me a little more time." 7 days, Mr. Patterson repeated firmly. "That is all the time you get." Nora left the office feeling hollow. 7 days to come up with 3 months of rent. It was impossible. But she could not let Tommy know how bad things were. He was already stressed about school and trying so hard to help by taking odd jobs after classes. That night, Nora lay awake, staring at the ceiling while Tommy slept peacefully in the next room. She thought about Victor, about the peace she felt when they were together. He had become her escape from reality, the one bright spot in increasingly dark days. But she could never tell him about this. He had his own struggles. The last thing he needed was her burden on top of his own. Stolen moments. Despite everything weighing on her, Nora treasured her time with Victor. They had developed their own private world, full of inside jokes and comfortable silences. One afternoon, they sat by the lake feeding ducks with stale bread Nora had brought from the cafe. "Tell me something nobody else knows about you," Victor said suddenly. Nora thought for a moment. "When I was little, I wanted to be a dancer. Not just any dancer, a ballerina. I used to practice in our living room, making up my own routines. My mom would clap and tell me I was going to perform at Lincoln Center someday. Why did you stop?" "We could not afford lessons. And then, life just took me in different directions." Nora tossed a piece of bread to an eager duck. "What about you? What is something nobody knows?" Victor hesitated. There were so many truths he could not share. Finally, he said, "I am terrified of being alone, not physically alone, but emotionally, of going through life and never connecting with anyone real." The honesty in his voice made Nora look at him closely. "You are not alone," she said softly. "You have me." The words hung between them, meaning more than either was ready to admit. The growing distance, as Victor spent more time with Nora, he began to notice things that troubled him, the way she sometimes winced when reaching for her wallet. How she always insisted on splitting bills, even when it clearly strained her budget. The dark circles under her eyes that grew more pronounced each day. One evening, after they had shared a cheap pizza at a corner restaurant, Victor tried to bring it up. "Nora, are you okay? You seem tired lately. More than usual." "Just busy with work and school," Nora said quickly, too quickly. "Nothing I cannot handle." "If you ever need anything," Victor began carefully, "if you ever need help with something, I want you to know you can ask me." Nora's expression hardened slightly. "I appreciate that, but I handle my own problems. Tommy and we take care of ourselves. We always have." Her pride was evident, and Victor understood it. She had been taking care of herself and her brother alone for 2 years. Accepting help probably felt like admitting defeat, but Victor wanted to help so desperately. He had resources that could solve everything for her. Yet the lie stood between them like a wall he had built himself, and now he did not know how to tear it down. 5 days before the eviction deadline, everything came to a head. Nora had picked up an extra catering shift at a corporate event downtown. The pay was good, and she needed every penny she could get. She was serving appetizers to well-dressed executives when she heard a familiar voice. "The quarterly projections look strong, Victor. The board is very pleased with your leadership." Nora's head snapped up. There, across the room, stood a man who looked exactly like Victor. But this Victor was standing, wearing an expensive suit, surrounded by people who clearly respected and deferred to him. Her hands began to shake. The tray of appetizers wobbled dangerously. It could not be him. Victor was in a wheelchair. Victor struggled financially like she did. Victor was real. But as she watched, the man laughed at something someone said, and she recognized that laugh. She knew that laugh. She had heard it 100 times over the past few weeks. The tray slipped from her fingers, crashing to the floor in a spectacular mess of broken glass and ruined food. Everyone turned to stare, including Victor. Their eyes met across the crowded room, and Nora saw the exact moment he recognized her. She saw the guilt flash across his face, the panic, the desperate attempt to think of an explanation. But there was no explanation that could fix this. Nora turned and ran, ignoring her supervisor calling after her. She pushed through the service entrance and into the cool night air, her mind reeling. He had lied. About everything. The wheelchair, the struggle, probably even his feelings. Everything had been a lie. Hot tears streamed down her face as she walked blindly down the street. She had trusted him. She had shared her hopes and fears with him. She had started to believe that maybe, just maybe, someone could care about her for who she truly was, and it had all been a game to him. Some rich man playing pretend, probably laughing at the poor waitress who was stupid enough to believe him. Her phone buzzed constantly in her pocket. Victor calling. She ignored it. By the time Nora reached her apartment building, she had made a decision. She would never see Victor Chen again. Whatever he was, whatever he wanted, it had nothing to do with her real life. She had 5 days to save her home, 5 days to figure out how to keep Tommy safe, and she would do it alone, just like she always had. The fairy tale was over. Reality was all that remained. Victor stood outside the corporate event, his phone pressed to his ear for the 20th time. Each call went straight to voicemail. Each message he left sounded more desperate than the last. Nora, please. Just let me explain. I know how this looks, but please, just give me a chance to talk to you. Nothing. Radio silence. He had dismissed himself from the event early, making excuses to confused colleagues. His assistant had looked at him like he had lost his mind when he demanded his driver take him immediately to Nora's apartment building. Now he sat in his car outside her building, staring up at the dim lights and what he assumed was her window. He wanted to go up there, to knock on her door and make her listen, but he had already violated her trust once. He would not force his way into her space uninvited. His phone rang suddenly. Hope surged through him until he saw it was his assistant. Not now, Jennifer, he said. Victor, the board meeting is in 2 hours. You need to review the presentation. Reschedule it. We cannot reschedule a board meeting. Then they can meet without me. I have something more important to handle. He hung up before she could protest further. Let them think he had lost his mind. Maybe he had. But for the first time in years, he was prioritizing what actually mattered. Tommy's crisis inside the apartment. Nora sat on her bed, knees pulled to her chest, trying to stop crying. She had cried enough. Tears solved nothing. She needed to focus on practical matters. 5 days to find rent money. 5 days to keep her promise to her parents. A soft knock came at her bedroom door. Nora, can I come in? She quickly wiped her face. Yeah, Tommy. Her brother entered, his expression worried. Are you okay? You came home early. Just tired, she lied, forcing a smile. Long shift. Tommy studied her with eyes too old for his age. Is it about Victor? Did something happen? The mention of his name sent a fresh wave of pain through her chest. We are not going to see him anymore. Why not? I thought you really liked him. Sometimes people are not who we think they are, Nora said quietly. It is better we found out now. Tommy sat beside her on the bed. Does this have anything to do with the papers I saw from Mr. Patterson? Nora's heart stopped. What papers? The eviction notice. I saw it when I was looking for my math homework. You left it on the kitchen counter last week. Tommy's voice was small. Are we going to lose the apartment? Nora felt her carefully constructed walls crumble. She had tried so hard to protect him, to keep him from worrying. But he had known all along. I am going to fix it, she promised, pulling him into a hug. I always fix things. We are going to be okay. But even as she said the words, she wondered if she believed them anymore. The next morning, Tommy woke up feeling strange. His head pounded and his throat felt like sandpaper. He tried to get out of bed but felt dizzy and collapsed back onto his pillow. Nora, he called weakly. She was there in seconds, her hand immediately going to his forehead. He was burning up. "How long have you felt sick?" she asked, trying to keep the panic from her voice. "Started last night. Thought it was just tired." Nora's mind raced. Tommy rarely got sick, and when he did, it hit him hard. She helped him sit up and gave him water, but his hands shook too much to hold the glass steady. "We are going to the clinic," she decided. "We cannot afford the clinic. I do not care. Come on!" The free clinic was packed with people, all waiting for the single doctor on duty. They waited for 3 hours before Tommy was finally seen. By then, his fever had climbed higher, and he could barely keep his eyes open. Dr. Harrison, a kind woman in her 50s, examined Tommy thoroughly. Her expression grew serious. "He has a severe infection," she said to Nora. "I am going to prescribe antibiotics, but these are not the cheap kind. His immune system is compromised, probably from stress and not enough proper nutrition. He needs the strong medication, or this could become dangerous." "How much?" Nora asked, though she was afraid to hear the answer. "The prescription will run about $400 at the pharmacy." Nora felt the room spin. $400! She had $63 in her bank account. The rest had gone to keeping the electricity on. "Is there a cheaper option?" Dr. Harrison's expression was sympathetic but firm. "Not for this. I am sorry. Without this medication, he could end up in the hospital, and that would cost exponentially more." Nora nodded numbly. "Okay. Thank you." She helped Tommy back to the apartment, settled him into bed with cool cloths on his forehead, then sat in the kitchen staring at the prescription slip. $400 she did not have. Rent money she did not have. An eviction notice hanging over their heads. For the first time since her parents died, Nora felt completely defeated. Her phone buzzed. Another message from Victor. She had received dozens over the past day. She had not read any of them, but now, desperate and out of options, she opened the messages. The first few were apologies, begging her to let him explain. Then they became more concerned, asking if she was okay. The most recent one, sent an hour ago, simply said, "Please, Nora, whatever you need. I am here. I know you are angry, and you have every right to be. But please do not shut me out completely." Her finger hovered over the call button. It would be so easy. He had money, clearly. He could solve this problem with barely a thought. Tommy could get his medication. They could pay the rent. Everything could be fixed. But at what cost? Her pride? Her dignity? The knowledge that she had relied on someone who had lied to her face for weeks? Nora put the phone down. She would find another way. She always did. Victor's discovery Victor had not slept. He had spent the entire night trying to figure out how to fix what he had broken. His assistant had fielded angry calls from board members. His schedule was in chaos. He did not care about any of it. At dawn, he made a decision. He drove to the cafe where Nora worked, hoping to catch her before her morning shift. But when he arrived, her manager told him she had called in sick. Nora never called in sick. Something was wrong. Victor went to her apartment building and knocked on the door. No answer. He knocked again, louder. "Nora, please. I just want to make sure you're okay." The door opened, but it was not Nora. Tommy stood there looking exhausted and worried. "She is not here," Tommy said. "She went to try to sell some of our stuff to get money for my medication." Victor's heart clenched. "You are sick?" "Bad infection. Need antibiotics that cost $400. Tommy swayed slightly, and Victor caught his arm. "You should be in bed." "Come on!" He helped Tommy back inside and onto the couch. The apartment was even smaller than he had imagined. Clean but sparse. A photograph of Nora and Tommy with their parents sat on a shelf, the only real decoration in the room. "She is really mad at you," Tommy said quietly. "I heard her crying last night. The words were like knives." "I know, I made a terrible mistake." "Why did you lie to her?" Victor sat down, deciding this kid deserved honesty. "Because I was tired of people only seeing my money. I wanted someone to see me, the actual person. But I went about it in the worst possible way, and I hurt your sister, who deserves better than that." Tommy studied him with those two wise eyes. "Do you actually care about her? Or was it all just some game?" I care about her more than I have cared about anyone in a very long time, Victor said honestly. Everything else was a lie, but that part was real. Then help us, Tommy said simply. We are about to lose our apartment. I am sick. Nora is working herself to death trying to keep us afloat. If you really care, prove it. The pawn shop. Nora stood in a dingy pawn shop, watching as the owner examined her mother's necklace. It was the last piece of jewelry she had, a simple silver chain with a small pendant. Her mother had worn it every day. I can give you $80, the owner said. It is worth more than that. To you, maybe. To me, it is $80 worth of silver. Nora felt tears prick her eyes, but blinked them back. Fine. She took the cash and left, the weight of loss heavy on her shoulders. $80. Still $320 short of what she needed for Tommy's medication, not to mention the rent. As she walked down the street, her phone rang. An unknown number. Hello? Miss Bennett? This is Riverside Community Bank. We are calling about a deposit made to your account this morning. We wanted to verify it was legitimate before processing. Nora stopped walking. A deposit? I did not make any deposit. It appears to be from an external source. The amount is $5,000. The world tilted. 5,000? That cannot be right. There must be a mistake. No mistake, ma'am. The deposit is real. We just needed to confirm you were expecting it for security purposes. Who sent it? The name on the transfer is Victor Chen. Nora felt anger and relief war inside her chest. Of course he did. Of course he tried to solve everything with money. I am refusing the deposit, she said firmly. Send it back. Ma'am, are you certain? This is a significant amount. Send it back, she repeated and hung up. She stood on the sidewalk, shaking with fury and desperation. How dare he? How dare he think he could just throw money at her and fix everything? She was not a charity case. She was not some project for a bored millionaire to feel good about helping. Her phone rang again. Victor, this time she answered. How dare you, she said before he could speak. How dare you try to send me money like I am some kind of charity case? Nora, please listen to me. No, you listen. You lied to me. For weeks you lied about everything. And now you think you can just buy your way into my good graces. I do not want your money, Victor. I do not want anything from you. Tommy needs medication. Your rent is overdue. Let me help. I do not need your help. I have been taking care of us just fine on my own. But you should not have to do it alone. Victor's voice rose with emotion. Yes, I lied. I made a horrible mistake, and I will regret it for the rest of my life. But my feelings for you were never a lie. Everything we shared, every conversation, every moment, that was real. How can I believe anything you say? Nora's voice cracked. You pretended to be someone you were not. I was actually being more myself with you than I have been in years, Victor said quietly. The man you met in that cafe, the one who laughed at your stories and listened to your dreams, that was the real me. Not the CEO, not the millionaire, just me. And I fell in love with you. The words hung in the air. Nora stood frozen on the sidewalk, people flowing around her like water around a stone. You do not love me, she whispered. You do not even know me. I know you work yourself to exhaustion for your brother. I know you hide your struggles behind humor. I know you dream of being a teacher but gave up that dream for someone you love. I know you feed pigeons in the park and laugh at your own jokes. I know you are the strongest, most genuine person I have ever met. And I know I do not deserve your forgiveness, but I am asking for it anyway. Nora closed her eyes, tears streaming down her face. I have to go. She hung up and stood there on the sidewalk, crying openly now. She had $80 in her pocket, a sick brother at home, and 5 days until they lost their apartment. And despite everything, despite the lies and the hurt, part of her wanted to believe him, but belief was a luxury she could not afford. The choice Victor sat in his car outside Nora's building, head in his hands. She had refused the money. Of course she had. She had too much pride, too much dignity. It was one of the things he loved about her, even if it was currently breaking his heart. He thought about his therapist's words from months ago. You cannot build a real connection on a foundation of lies. He had learned that lesson the hard way. His phone rang. It was Tommy. Victor? Nora is not answering her phone, and I feel really bad. I think my fever is getting worse. Victor's decision was immediate. I am coming up right now. Do not move. He took the stairs 2 at a time, using the key Tommy told him was hidden under the mat. Inside, Tommy was on the couch, his face flushed with fever and his body shaking. "How long have you been like this?" "It got worse about an hour ago." Victor did not hesitate. He called his personal physician, Dr. Stevens, who agreed to make a house call immediately. Then he called his assistant. "Jennifer, I need you to go to Riverside Pharmacy. Pick up a prescription for Tommy Bennett." He rattled off the details from the slip he found on the kitchen counter. "Pay whatever it costs and bring it to this address within the hour. Also contact my lawyer. I need him to handle a landlord situation." "Victor, what is going on?" "Just do it, please. I will explain later." Dr. Stevens arrived 30 minutes later, examined Tommy, and administered fluids and medication to bring down his fever. "He will be all right, but he needs rest and the full course of antibiotics. No skipping doses." "He will get it," Victor promised. "Whatever he needs." Jennifer arrived with the medication, her eyes wide as she took in the small apartment and understood, perhaps for the first time, what was really going on. "The landlord situation is handled," she said quietly. "Your lawyer spoke with Mr. Patterson. The back rent has been paid, and they have a 6-month lease extension with no increase." "Thank you, Jennifer. Take the rest of the day off." After everyone left, Victor sat with Tommy, making sure he took his medication and keeping cold compresses on his forehead. The fever began to break as the medicine took effect. "You did not have to do all this," Tommy said sleepily. "Yes, I did," Victor replied. "Your sister will never forgive me, but at least I can make sure you both are safe." "She will forgive you," Tommy said. "She just needs time." "Nora acts tough, but she feels everything really deeply. That is why this hurt her so much. Because she really cared about you." The words gave Victor a tiny spark of hope. Coming home, Nora trudged up the stairs to her apartment, exhausted and defeated. She had spent hours walking around the city trying to think of solutions, coming up empty every time. In her pocket, the $80 from her mother's necklace felt like blood money. She opened the door and stopped dead. Victor was sitting on her couch, Tommy asleep beside him with a normal color to his face instead of the feverish flush. On the coffee table sat a pharmacy bag with Tommy's antibiotics. "What did you do?" she asked quietly. Victor stood, his expression cautious. Tommy called. His fever was getting worse. "I called my doctor, got him the medication, made sure he was stable. I told you I did not want your help." "I know. But Tommy needed help and I was here. What was I supposed to do, let him suffer because you are angry with me?" Nora wanted to stay angry, but looking at her brother sleeping peacefully, finally getting the medicine he needed, her walls began to crack. "The landlord called," she said. "Someone paid our back rent. That was you too." "Yes. I cannot accept this. I cannot accept any of it." "Then pay me back," Victor said simply. "When you are able, pay me back every penny. I do not care if it takes years. I am not trying to buy you, Nora. I am trying to help someone I care about who is drowning and too proud to grab a life preserver." "You lied to me," Nora's voice broke. "You made me believe we were the same, that you understood my struggles. And the whole time you were just playing pretend." "I was not playing." Victor moved closer, his voice intense. "That was the most real I have been in years. Yes, I lied about the wheelchair and the money. But everything else, every feeling, every word, that was true. I did understand your struggles because for the first time, I saw what real strength looks like. I saw someone fighting with everything they had for someone they loved, and it humbled me." Tears streamed down Nora's face. "How can I trust you again?" "I do not know," Victor admitted. "But I am willing to spend however long it takes proving to you that I am worth trusting." "No more lies, no more games. Just me, the real me, flaws and all." They stood in the small living room, the space between them filled with hurt and hope and possibility. "I do not want your money," Nora said finally. "I do not want to be some charity project or a way for you to feel good about yourself." "You are not. You never were. You are the woman who made me laugh again, who reminded me what it feels like to connect with someone real, who made me want to be better than I have been." Nora looked at him, really looked at him. She saw the exhaustion in his eyes, the genuine remorse, the raw honesty. "If we do this," she said slowly, "if I give you another chance." "No more lies. Ever. About anything." No more lies, Victor promised. I swear. And I pay back every penny you spent. This is a loan, not a gift. Whatever you want. Nora took a shaky breath. And you have to meet me where I am, not in some fantasy world. My actual life with all its mess and chaos and struggle, I would not want it any other way. She studied him for another long moment, then took a tentative step forward. Victor met her halfway, and when they embraced, it felt like coming home after a long journey. You really hurt me, she whispered against his shoulder. I know. I am so sorry. If you ever lie to me again, we are done. No second chances. Never again. I promise. They stood there holding each other as Tommy slept peacefully on the couch, and the afternoon sun streamed through the windows of the small apartment. It was not a fairy tale ending. There would be challenges ahead, conversations to have, trust to rebuild, but it was real. And real was what they both needed. 6 months later, the small coffee shop where they had first met, where everything had begun with a case of mistaken identity, had become their special place. They sat at the same corner table, but this time there was no wheelchair, no pretense, just two people who had found each other through chaos. Tommy was thriving in school, his health fully recovered. Nora had reduced her work hours and returned to college part-time, studying to become a teacher. Victor had started a foundation to help working families afford education and health care. I have something for you, Victor said, pulling out a small box. Nora opened it to find her mother's necklace. How did you... I tracked down the pawn shop and bought it back. I know how much it means to you. Nora felt tears well up as she fastened it around her neck. Thank you. There is one more thing, Victor said nervously. He pulled out another small box. Nora's eyes widened as he opened it to reveal a simple, elegant ring. I know we said we would take things slow, Victor began, and we do not have to get married tomorrow or even this year. But I know that I want to spend my life with you. The real me. No games, no pretense, just us. So, Nora Bennett, will you marry me? Nora looked at this man who had lied to her, hurt her, then proved himself through actions rather than words, who had shown up every day for 6 months, earning back her trust piece by piece. Yes, she said, laughing and crying at the same time. Yes, I will marry you. As Victor slipped the ring on her finger, Nora thought about how strangely life worked. How a mistake, sitting at the wrong table, had led her to exactly where she needed to be. Sometimes the best love stories started with chaos. Sometimes they required forgiveness and second chances. Sometimes they were messy and complicated and real, and sometimes those were the ones worth fighting for, the end.